Welcome to the second part of this video series for Apptica Academy, all about creative development. My name is Chris Szymanski and I'm the creative director at AppAgent. In the last video, we looked at the research that needs to go into developing a creative strategy, but we're not done yet. There is more to consider. Let's talk about data for a minute. If you've been running some campaigns, you should already have some data that can give you some insights that can form part of your strategy. Here are my top 5 data insights. Number 1, look at the ad's ability to spend. Machine learning is able to predict success pretty damn fast these days. Your goal is to find ads that can scale and stay relevant for a long time, appealing to a broad audience. If a current ad is gathering spend easily, it's most likely on point for your audience. Number 2, the CTR and IPM. These will provide insights on the initial hook and how relevant and compelling the ad is to your target audience, as well as its ability to drive results versus impressions on the ad network. Number 3, ROAS. This will help you ensure that you're driving the right audience that will spend time in the game. Analyze this from your day 1 to your day 30 retention. Number 4 and 5, the hook rate and the hold rate. These are 2 little gems from Meta. The hook rate is how many people watch the ad until the 3rd second. The hold rate is how many people watch the ad from the 3rd to the 15th seconds. Both will tell you how the performance is of particular parts of your ad. If your hook rate is low, but your hold rate is high, this could mean that a rework of the hook could result in a high-performing creative. More on that later. At this point, you're probably asking yourself, well, what do I do with all this? Well, remember the creative deconstruction that we talked about in part 1. If any of your ads are showing promising signs, now is the moment to figure out what is causing that performance and carry that over into your future creatives. With your research done, you should now have everything to start forming your strategy. Unsure on how to bring it together? Here are 2 things that we recommend it should definitely include. You need to establish what is your creative ideation mix. What does this mean? Let's say every month you are creating a new batch of videos. That could be 5 videos or 50 videos, depending on your spend. Within that batch of creatives, you need to decide what is your percentage of experimentation. Let me explain a little bit more. The base or the majority of your strategy should be focused on reverse engineering or copying high-performing competitor ads and or building on your learnings of previous ads. But there should be some level of experimentation. This could be taking inspiration from some of that research you did about cultural influences, but also wild, out-of-the-box ideas formed from your intuition. Why? Well, copying ads is a great strategy, but it will only get you so far. Yes, you will be able to find some performance very easily, but it will limit your ability to scale, and the ads have a much shorter life. While an out-of-the-box idea will have more misses than hits, but when you find one that pops, its scalability and its possible lifetime is much greater. This ratio will depend on where you are in your journey of the game. A new game should be leaning towards on being inspired by what is working for others. This will allow you to create quicker volume and understand what is working for a broader audience. A more established game with a long history of creatives and a solid brand, you might want more out-of-the-box ideas to replace long-standing winners and unlock new audiences. Next up is creative directions. With every creative strategy, you should be identifying a minimum of 3 different themes or creative angles that could lead you to achieving your objectives. A creative direction could be a narrative theme or a style of creative or focusing on a particular part of the game. A creative direction should include a clear description of its intention, a hypothesis of why it might work, and stuff like player motivations, mechanics, key messaging, style of creatives that will be covered in that creative direction. It's also good to include a key image that captures the mood and tone of that creative and communicates it clearly to your team. Okay, so you have your creative strategy in place. What's next? Ideation. We're going to be talking about video creatives, but this methodology can also be applied to playables. A video creative has 3 main parts: the hook, the core, and the end card. The hook we classify as the first 3 to 5 seconds and is where you need to grab the attention of your audience. Put all your creative efforts into the hook, as this will determine the success or the failure of the creative. More on this in part 3. The core is the main part of the ad from second 3 onwards and will most likely include some narrative, a gameplay sequence, and key messaging. And the end card is exactly that. It finalizes the creative. It usually includes the game's branding, call to action, and a button. If you've done the work on the research and creative directions, you should have plenty of ideas. But always remember, what is the intention of the ad? What do you want people to do, or know, or feel once they've watched the ad? Work back from there, reverse engineer the creative to lead you to that point. So what makes a great creative for your game? Actually, there's no magic formula. This is why we test so many creatives. It can change so much per game and audience. What works for one game doesn't necessarily mean it will work for another. But there are a few things that you should keep in mind. Number one, keep it simple. Don't try and pack too much into one creative. Focus on one thing and make that sing as loud as it can. Number two, give love and attention to your hook. And don't be fooled into thinking that your first idea is the best one. Experiment and brainstorm many ideas. Number three, don't be afraid to over-communicate things. Let's say you want the viewer to have a sense of pressure when watching the ad. What visual and sound elements can you add to emphasize that feeling as much as possible? Could it be a ticking clock? Could it be a pulsating red border? Number four, make sure any gameplay objective is clear. If you're showing gameplay, remove all distractions and keep the viewer watching what you want them to watch. And make sure the logic or the objective is clear within the first few seconds. Number five, create custom end cards. Don't just use a generic one-size-fits-all end card. Create end cards that capture the mood and tone and the narrative of the creative. That's it for video 2. Next up, we have a video dedicated to the one thing that can be the difference between your creators being an average one to a winning one: the hook.